Hello everyone, Richard Lewis here with a quick video, and it seems that Riot have done it again. I continually am surprised, and I know I shouldn't be. It just keeps happening over and over. But I'm making a video here about the competitive ruling affecting Martin Deficio Linger and Carl Dentist Cray. And basically, I'm sure you followed the drama if you're watching this video, but I'll just give you a brief summary. They've suspended a coach predicated on what appears to be mostly bullshit until the fourth week of the broadcast, the LCS broadcast. And they've done the same to a Riot employee who works as a commentator, but also manufactured a situation that prevents him taking any meaningful job within the sport for 18 months. So they've excelled themselves. Now, I've covered lots of these competitive rulings. I'm just going to tell you something right off the bat about these Riot investigations that they have. Because as somebody that conducts investigative journalism, let me tell you how disappointing these investigations are, how disappointed you would be if you were to know how they work. It's always the same. They're basically a Salem witch trial. The investigators go around talking to people. They usually do it face to face or on the phone, so there's no potential paper trail. They get a load of hearsay and what happened here, and can you tell me this, and is this a chat log, and when was this from, and then they get the accused in a room and they just bombard them with all of the he said, she said bullshit until they panic and crack. And this has been the case for like every person I've ever spoken to when one of these rulings sort of crop up. They just keep saying they've got evidence, and if you don't confess to what they're accusing you of, they'll just keep topping up the punishments. Things will just be worse for you. And as anybody knows, if you want to work in League of Legends, if you want to work in that part of this industry, you've just simply got to let Riot do whatever they want to do to you. It's just that simple. You just have to, allow them. Everybody knows this is this is just an established fact. So I looked at this statement. I went over it a few times. I can really only see a small amount of wrongdoing here, and not a lot of factual evidence to back up some of the alleged wrongdoing at that. And obviously, yeah, okay, they don't always release evidence into the public domain, but I don't really... we'll just get into it. So, right at the top of the statement, they talk about this situation, how it came up. And they say, despite evidence that Dentist had verbally claimed to Copenhagen Wolves players he was receiving information from Deficio on in-game strategy, our investigation uncovered no evidence to support this claim. I mean, that first of all should be worded his claim, not this claim, because that would make it a contradictory sentence. But regardless, I'm already struggling now to sort of see why this is an issue. An allegation has clearly been made that Deficio is feeding Copenhagen Wolves via Dentist strategies. You've investigated this and found that there is no evidence to substantiate this claim. So if the claim is being made by the coach, I have to ask, ultimately, where is the harm? If you can't prove that this happened, in fact, to the contrary, you're saying there is no evidence whatsoever to substantiate this allegation, I don't see the problem. It's idle chit-chat. It's things people say. It goes on to say, while interviewing LCS officials, Dentist admitted that in the interest of shoring up his authority with the team, he had implied to them that he was getting strategic information from Deficio, but his claims were unfounded. Now, can you explain to me why one of the most successful and widely recognised coaches needs to shore up his authority with his team? Let's be clear about what Dentist has achieved. Under his regime, Copenhagen Wolves have gone from being relegation candidates every time to making the playoffs. It's a matter of public record that the owner of Copenhagen Wolves gives him pretty much complete autonomy, or as close to, in the day-to-day running of the team. He's a guy who decides who they buy, who they sell, pay rises even. He tells the owner what they need to be successful. Everybody knows this. It's publicly known. It's privately known. So why would he ever need to concoct a story about getting information from a commentator to make his players have more faith in his ability? That story makes no sense. It reeks of bullshit. Now, it then goes on to say, based on the lack of evidence to support dentist's initial claims, we concluded that no strategy has been shared which could have challenged competitive integrity in this case. So ultimately what we're saying is the allegations that led to the investigation have proved completely fruitless, but we've continued to investigate other things that were brought to light during this time because they affect our business. And there's a weird implication here, because it says that if they're admitting that nothing happened, then what they're punishing dentist for, assuming he said this anyway, which I don't believe he did, but assuming he did, as Riot seemed to be doing, if I'm a coach and I tell my players that if we lose this game, Nick Allen's going to fine them, and he'll fine them their entire salary, and we'll put them in a Riot gulag in Siberia, what's the problem? It's a psychological tool. I'm trying to motivate my players by feeding them bullshit. I think lots of coaches do that. We can still win, guys. Come on. In the back of your mind, you're thinking, can we fuck? Like, this is done. But, you've got to feed your players' belief if you want to have any chance. So, now what Riot is saying is, you need to be careful about fiction that you say, things that aren't true, because if Riot gets wind of it and they don't like how it sounds, then you can be subject to penalty. So I find that odd. But the whole dentist thing isn't the weirdest part of it for me. It's the Deficio situation is the weirdest part. And clearly this dentist ruling here is almost like the gateway they've used to penalise their employee. I don't think they're genuinely that concerned about what dentist has or hasn't done. I don't think there's any evidence to substantiate these claims. They're admitting no wrongdoing took place. So it seems very strange that they're putting out such a harsh penalty, especially given this is an organisation, Riot, that didn't seem to have too much of a problem with what MYM did when they threatened to take away a player's mother's house because she was a co-signatory on his contract because he was a minor. Now, they banned the manager that directly made those threats and intimidated the player after he'd already been fired by MYM anyway. And then they put out some statement basically saying, well, mistakes were made on both sides, really. We'll fine them €5,000, which Corey ended up paying for himself anyway in the fine that MYM issued to him privately. And Riot know about all of this and were happy to sign off on it. So I've got to say, you got to get your fucking priorities straight, because this sounds like a load of tittle-tattle, and you're treating it with a greater degree of severity than something that was provably happening under your watch, Riot, to a young man, and you've said because maybe he tried to get out of the team, it's kind of sort of semi-justified. So, cool. Anyway, however, during the course of this investigation, we were made aware that Copenhagen Wolves had offered Deficio a management position to join the organisation at the conclusion of the 2015 season, and that the two parties had ongoing conversations for the past 6 weeks. It goes on. Although it's not unusual for Rioters to be approached with offers from LCS organisations, it's important that the organisation and Rioter let us know as soon as an offer is made to raise awareness around potential conflicts of interest. Now, what are we actually saying here? Are we saying that if you work for Riot and you receive a job offer from any outside competitor, you need to declare it immediately, even if the job offer is as far away as 6 months or the end of it? It doesn't work like that. The real world doesn't work like that. You're under no obligation to say to your employer, hey, I got these wicked job offers, which I can take at the end of the year. I've got an option there. This can lead to corporate bullying, which I'd argue is potentially happening here, it can lead to them terminating your contract. They can decide, well, we'll bring it forward then. Oh, you want to leave? Huh? You don't love it. Companies and corporations are fucking weird, especially ones like this, right? So why would you feel comfortable going to your boss and be saying, look, 6 months from now, I'm probably going to take another job. Don't worry, though. Companies want to feel that they have a degree of control. They can keep your behavior in check. They don't want to feel that you're ever going to phone it in. They don't want to feel that you're not going to do a good day's work. They lose that confidence in their ability to discipline you effectively, control you effectively, or to get a good day's labour out of you if what you're effectively saying to them at the end of the day is, fuck it, I'm going to leave. I've already got one foot out the door. Do your worst. I've worked in businesses like that. You know, been a trade union shop steward, giving advice to people when they're dealing with disciplinary stuff inside. There's no fucking inside their workplace. There's no fucking way you should be declaring to your bosses, you know, hey, I've got a job offer. I'm probably going to take it. In an ideal world, it wouldn't make any difference, but it's far from a fucking ideal world. So I can't even believe that Riot are now saying that this needs to be declared. This isn't. And keep in mind the logic that we're applying as a community as well. We're saying that, say, for example, if you're a moderator on a subreddit and you go for a job interview with Riot and you've said, hey, we want to work for Riot, it's okay for you to moderate an independent space because we don't believe there's a conflict of interest. But apparently it's not okay for you if you work for Riot to entertain a job offer from a company directly under your control because this creates a potential conflict of interest. Guy's a commentator. What the fuck can he do? So I'll tell you exactly what the real motivation for this is. This is Riot have invested in a piece of talent, Deficio. And if you're an LCS organisation effectively under their rule, they don't want them poaching their talent that they've invested in, because they consider that some sort of horrific betrayal. If it's an outside company that they can have no influence over, they're fucked. They can't do anything. But if you want to play in the LCS and you want to be a fucking good little, you know, lick spittle and play and have all the benefits that an organisation in LCS does, that brand awareness and all of that, they're like, well, look, you got to fucking pay the piper, and that means if you want to employ our fucking staff, try and poach them away from us, you're going to have a bad time. You know, it's as simple as that. That's exactly what's happened here. So it's not about conflict of interest at all. Indeed, Riot were pretty quiet about conflicts of interest when it came to Lemon Dogs being used as a feeder team for NIP and all of that bullshit that was going on there. In fact, they were complicit in that because they were talking to NIP management about Lemon Dogs' business. They never cared about a conflict of interest when sponsors, which are financial interests after all, support multiple teams that sometimes have to play each other. They let the whole Evil Geniuses and Alliance thing slide for, like how long? Before they decided to create a bullshit ruling, and one that took away the brands of Evil Geniuses and Alliance, but didn't even address the problem of influence, because those new brands were still represented by the Good Game Agency, owned by Alex Garfield, which was the problem in the first place. Those are all conflicts of interest. You've let them happen on your watch. You're not interested in fixing conflicts of interest, as long as it doesn't rock the boat. As long as it doesn't affect your product, your advert for your game. Now, did we forget about the biggest fucking conflict of interest of all, which is Riot, when it comes to all matters disciplinary, a judge, jury, and executioner, they have no appeals process in place for anyone that they dispense their rulings to, nor do they allow any independent arbitrary bodies, unions, for example, to have any say in what's going on. So their whole system is founded on a conflict of interest. The conflict of interest being Riot get to decide everything about Riot's LCS product, even though outside entities are part of it. So this for me is simply about them not wanting to lose a commentator that they've groomed, someone who's become well liked, someone who's become an integral part of their broadcast, and they would be losing it to somebody that they would have to effectively be giving money to. They'd have to Riot would lose him, but then be in a position where they would still be paying him. That's not happening on Riot's watch. That they consider that a great affront. So it goes on to say, in this case, we believe that Deficio showed poor judgment in navigating this conflict of interest. Over the course of our investigation, we found evidence indicating that Deficio had begun speaking with several LCS players, contracted and free agents, about their future and the possibility of working with them on the Copenhagen Wolves. These conversations influenced or had the potential to influence player decisions on where they chose to play and affected the competitive integrity of LCS. So first, I'm just going to ignore the whole free agent thing. What is a free agent? If you're a free fucking agent, you're a free fucking agent. You can talk to anyone about anything. So there can be no tampering there. You're a free fucking agent. But I do agree that for a Riot employee in any position to be interfering with teams at any time is bad. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, they need to take some form of action here. I think it could be just dealt with internally, get all the parties around the table, say, look, this has happened. Is anyone pissed off about it? We're going to do this. They're already saying in this statement they're going to punish him internally anyway, and that legally they can't say what it is. So we know he's being punished. They could have just done that privately anyway. There's no need for the shit show. Ultimately, this is a fairly minor thing in the grand scheme of things. This isn't the worst thing that's ever happened in League of Legends. And certainly, probably not even the worst thing a Riot has done. So, the other thing I want to add to that point is that this is something that the affected organisation should be pursuing, which is like what they do with the poaching allegations, think Team Dignitas and CLG. Now, so far, there's no evidence that we've seen, or even implied evidence in this statement, that any organisation has implied about this alleged tampering. The only thing that anyone has brought to the attention of Riot is the admittedly fictitious strategy leak, which never happened. And what it then devolved into was this convoluted, Deficio's thinking about leaving Riot, is he? Okay. And they started just pursuing that line of investigation because it affects their interests. They also add that by making false claims, by his own admission to his team, that Deficio was providing information, this is back to Dentist, that Deficio was providing information on other teams' strategy, Dentist knowingly misled his own players, created the expectation that cheating was an acceptable part of team play. Equally, Dentist obstructed the investigation by changing his story and initially denying making these claims to the Copenhagen Wolves team, though he ultimately cooperated after being presented with evidence. Above all, Dentist was complicit in tampering that could compromise the integrity of the LCS. As a result, we will be suspending him from the LCS until week 4. Now, again, I don't buy this fucking line about Dentist sitting down and telling his players, Deficio's feeding us information, so we're going to win. Why are we... Well, look, since when did we all agree that Deficio was the strategy oracle, by the way? That, again, the implication is that Dentist, a successful coach for Copenhagen Wolves, with provable results, values a commentator's input over his own. Really? Am I supposed to believe that? Because I don't. And then, Riot, you've got to stop doing this, guys. You've got to stop bringing up this phrase. Because when you say this can compromise the integrity of the LCS, you open yourself to the most easy criticism that any critic of you, well, and there's like 3 of us, that could throw at you. And that is that you yourselves have on multiple occasions compromised the integrity of LCS and continue to do so. Do you forget about what happened with Gambit when they had to go to Wembley and they couldn't get fucking visas and they had to play with ringers, and that all happened because you fucked up giving them notice about where that event was going to be and you made them play anyway, and that completely subverts the whole league and you signed off on that. So don't talk about competitive integrity. You've got to stop using that phrase because it means nothing to you when your business interests are on the line. Stop saying it. It's bullshit. Then they talk about Deficio again, And they say, despite his full cooperation with this investigation, we take this lapse in judgment extremely seriously. As such, we will be suspending Deficio from on-air duties until week 4, and in talking to Martin, we've mutually decided to withdraw him from the casting desk for all Copenhagen Wolves games on an indefinite basis to help avoid any future conflict of interest. As a Riot, he will also be subject to internal disciplinary measures which by law are confidential. Furthermore, we will be restricting Deficio from being approved as a team member. That means player, coach, manager or owner, i.e. someone that Riot directly pay for and have approval of if you want to be in their league, for any LCS team for the rest of the 2015 and the entirety of the 2016 season. This does not prevent him, and this is the hilarious part, this does not prevent him joining an external organisation in another capacity, but given the breach of trust, we feel that this ruling is important to protect the competitive integrity of the LCS and to demonstrate our intolerance for any tampering or inappropriate influence over any LCS games, teams or organisations. Now I ask you, first off, what does suspending Deficio for 4 weeks and then preventing him from ever casting a Copenhagen Wolves game actually achieve? First of all, they get a slightly worse broadcast. Cool. They get to accelerate their grooming of Crepo because there'll be plenty of him in the interim period. Guess that's cool. But the ridiculous part is preventing him from casting Copenhagen Wolves games ever again. He always had ties to the organisation, right? And it was never a problem before. Never been brought up. He's even made numerous jokes on broadcasts about, he loves his Danes and he loves his, everyone's fine with it. So now he can't commentate on Copenhagen Wolves games. Like, what's he going to do from the fucking broadcaster's chair? Shout over, guys are invading. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. So let's be real about why that's there. And it's a fucking badge of shame, isn't it? It's a not so subtle way to remind every viewer of how he fucked up. Every viewer who watches EULCS will where's Deficio? Haha, you remember? Oh, yeah. So the fans will just bring it up every time Copenhagen Wolves play. It shames, the organisation. It shames their employee. That's exactly their intention. They don't want you to forget about it. And Riot loves a good name and shame. They'll do it for anyone and everyone. So you can also safely bet that now that Martin is on the fucking shit list, not a good place to be, they'll be looking to manage him out the door as soon as is realistically possible. So, the final point, I think, in this absolute travesty is just to be cognizant of what has actually occurred here. They've essentially found out that a rioter wants to potentially leave and have then predicated on the back of a complaint that we don't even know where it emanates from, or I should say an allegation that we don't even know where it emanates from. They have created what looks very much to me like an absolute fantasy that enables them to stop him taking a real job for 18 months. So let's use just an extreme example. Think about a slave trying to flee the plantation. He gets publicly horsewhipped, and then they just say, fuck it, we'll build bigger fences as well. That won't happen again. That's pretty much what's happened here in a metaphorical sense. So I can't even believe they've had the nerve to put this out publicly. Let's be clear. Riot have worked incredibly hard these last 2 years to create an environment where the only real jobs relating to League of Legends require you to be in LCS. Right? That's the only way, realistically, you can make a living out of League of Legends. Some high-profile challenger teams, maybe, with big financial backing, but what's the aspiration of a challenger team? To get into LCS. So even that's a fucking short leash. Right? So you create this environment, and then you say, you can't join any of those real jobs in our sport because if you step out of line, you can't join one of those jobs. That's what they're saying. So they ultimately control the entire spectrum of employment within their esport. Goes for broadcasting, goes for players, management, now coaches. So if you do anything to irritate Riot, they can bring it up. Let's not forget the player behaviour checks. What's that really about? It's ridiculous. So, fuck it. If I was Copenhagen Wolves, right, I'd just hire Deficio as an analyst, pay him the same fucking cost as a coach, and let him have just coaching rights on the team. Keep it all clandestine and secret. Fuck it, you could even hire him as a water boy, and that would be the ultimate fuck you to Riot Games, because this is ridiculous. This is something that can't be allowed to stand. But of course you can't do this, because Riot pay for everything. That's all the salaries that are going to Copenhagen Wolves players, coaches, that comes from Riot. So all it proves is that once you become reliant on a fucking sugar daddy, in any capacity, you can never leave them. Even if what they want to do to you on a daily basis is fucking terrible. So it's really shocking to me that this has been allowed to happen, that this has gone on unchecked. There could even be some legal ramifications here. We have no idea, of course, what's within the content of Martin's contract. But ultimately now, he's left with this prospect of just having, well, I can't take a job in the fucking sport I love. So he's forced now to stay put. And he'll have to. And it just creates this weird aura around him. It's just another example of how Riot will just go to these ridiculous lengths to just put people on the leash. And I can't believe that anybody out there who's seen this ruling can think any different. That's what's happened here. Also, just a quick shout out to Doa, the commentator over at in Korea, who obviously buddies up with Monty most of the time. He came out and made a great twit longer about it, saying pretty much what I've summarized partially in this video. Now, you got to be careful. So if I was him, and if I were you, I'd be watching that space, because Riot won't like that at all. And it's just getting ridiculous that this is the situation we're in, where the overlords of this particular esport cannot be criticised, even when, like in this instance, they are clearly in the fucking wrong. So I'm sure there won't be a drama too far away, and when there is, I'll be there waiting to give you my thoughts about it. See you next time.